For more than 40 years, the civilizations of the Galactic Coalition had watched Earth from a distance. Human beings were considered interesting but harmless. Reports described them as curious explorers who had only recently learned to travel beyond their own solar system. Their technology was improving, but compared to the ancient powers of the galaxy, humanity was still seen as young and inexperienced. Most leaders never paid much attention to Earth. They believed humans would need hundreds of years before becoming an important part of galactic affairs. Some scientists admired the creativity of the species, while others simply ignored them. In the eyes of many, Earth was just another world filled with dreamers trying to find their place among the stars. That opinion remained unchanged until the day strange signals appeared near one of the busiest trade routes in known space. At first, nobody considered the discovery important. Unknown signals appeared from time to time, and they usually turned out to be civilian ships or scientific expeditions. The station responsible for monitoring the region received a transmission and quickly identified its origin. The signal came from Earth. The news caused some curiosity but no concern. Several officers even joked about it. Humans had finally decided to send visitors farther into the galaxy. It was something many expected to happen sooner or later. Everyone assumed it would be a small shuttle carrying researchers, diplomats, and perhaps a few engineers eager to introduce themselves to their neighbors. Commander Varen, who supervised security in the sector, shared the same opinion. Probably a peaceful mission, he told his crew with a smile. They are likely more nervous than we are. His words brought laughter across the control room. Preparations began immediately. Nearby stations arranged welcoming ceremonies. Scientists prepared translation programs. Trade representatives hoped to establish new partnerships. Everything felt routine. No one expected history to change in the next few hours. As the unidentified object approached, long-range scanners started receiving unusual readings. At first, technicians thought there was a problem with their equipment. The numbers made no sense. One operator checked the data 3 times before reporting it. "There must be an error," she said nervously. Commander Varen frowned. "What kind of error?" "The mass readings are impossible." Another technician looked over the information and became equally confused. "The sensors are working perfectly." Silence slowly filled the room. Everyone stared at the display. The object was enormous, far larger than a shuttle, far larger than a transport ship. In fact, it was larger than several military carriers combined. Nobody spoke for several seconds. One officer finally cleared his throat. "Could the scanners be seeing multiple ships?" "No," came the answer. "It is one vessel." The room became quiet again. Commander Varen's smile disappeared. "One ship?" Technician nodded. "One ship." Nobody understood how that was possible. Humanity was not supposed to possess anything close to such a machine. Their known fleet consisted mostly of exploration vessels and cargo ships. According to official records, they lacked the industrial capabilities needed to build something of that scale. Yet the evidence appeared right before their eyes. The object continued moving toward the system. More sensors activated. More stations received the same readings. Within minutes, messages began spreading across neighboring sectors. The reactions ranged from confusion to disbelief. Some believed the data had been corrupted. Others thought pirates had somehow disguised themselves with human signals. A few even suspected a practical joke. But then the object emerged from hyperspace, and every joke immediately died. Gasps echoed throughout the command center. The giant vessel slowly appeared against the stars like a moving city. Its surface stretched for kilometers. Rows of engines glowed softly along the rear sections. Massive structures covered the exterior, but unlike most warships, its design looked surprisingly elegant. Smooth lines ran across the hull. Bright lights illuminated countless sections. The entire ship seemed almost peaceful despite its incredible size. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. Even veteran officers with centuries of experience stood frozen. One young technician whispered quietly. "That's not a shuttle," no one argued. Across the galaxy, emergency channels suddenly became crowded. Images of the mysterious vessel spread everywhere. News networks interrupted regular programming. Scientists abandoned meetings. Government leaders demanded explanations. People gathered in public squares and entertainment halls to watch live broadcasts. Millions stared at the screens, and they all asked the same question. How? How had humanity built something like this? Back on Earth, the answer was far simpler than anyone imagined. Inside the enormous vessel, Captain Orion Hale sat comfortably in the command section while reading reports from various departments. The atmosphere aboard the ship was relaxed. Crew members chatted casually. Engineers discussed maintenance schedules. Medical teams prepared for routine inspections. Several young officers excitedly talked about finally meeting alien civilizations face to face. Nobody on board sensed the panic spreading outside. Their mission was peaceful. They had spent years preparing for this moment. Humanity had dreamed about joining the wider galactic community for generations. This voyage represented hope, cooperation, and friendship. The massive vessel itself had become a symbol of unity back on Earth. Nations that had once competed with one another had worked together to create it. Scientists, engineers, and explorers from every continent contributed to the project. Millions of ordinary people had followed its construction. Children grew up watching documentaries about it. Families celebrated every successful stage. For humanity, the ship represented the best of their species. They simply wanted to introduce themselves properly. Captain Hale looked around the bridge and smiled. Everyone appeared excited. "This is it," he said. "Years of preparation. Try not to look too nervous when we meet them." Laughter filled the room. One officer admitted he had practiced greetings for months. Another joked about accidentally saying something embarrassing to an alien ambassador. The mood remained cheerful. Nobody imagined they were terrifying the entire galaxy. Meanwhile, Commander Varen struggled to understand the situation. His scanners showed no signs of aggression. No weapons were active. No shields were raised. The vessel moved calmly and maintained communication frequencies openly. Nothing about its behavior suggested hostility. Yet fear had already begun spreading. Messages arrived every minute. Military commanders demanded immediate updates. Politicians asked whether the sector was under threat. Several systems activated defense networks as a precaution. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some claimed humanity had secretly conquered nearby regions. Others insisted the vessel was merely the first of thousands. Wild theories appeared everywhere. Panic always traveled faster than truth. Commander Varen disliked what he was seeing. He preferred evidence over fear. After studying the available data, he noticed something strange. The transmission sent by the humans contained welcoming messages. Not warnings, not demands, welcoming messages. The translation software finished decoding them. One sentence immediately caught his attention. "Greetings from Earth. We come with friendship and hope for cooperation." Varen read the line twice. It did not sound like a threat. In fact, it sounded surprisingly sincere, yet convincing others would not be easy. Fear had already planted dangerous ideas inside many minds. Across the coalition, emergency meetings were being organized. Influential leaders argued over possible responses. Some demanded caution. Others demanded immediate action. Nobody possessed enough information, but uncertainty often frightened people more than facts. Back aboard the giant vessel, Captain Hale received confirmation that nearby stations had acknowledged their presence. His crew applauded. At last, first contact had begun. Years of preparation were finally paying off. The captain stood and looked through the large observation window. Countless stars stretched endlessly ahead. Somewhere among them waited civilizations humanity had dreamed of meeting for centuries. He felt proud. Not because of the ship around him, not because of humanity's technology, but because billions of people back home had placed their hopes inside this mission. Everyone wanted peace. Everyone wanted understanding. Everyone wanted a better future. Captain Hale smiled softly. "Let's make history." He had no idea history had already begun. And far beyond the bridge, hidden behind emergency meetings and rising fear, forces were beginning to move. People who expected a simple shuttle had witnessed something impossible. And the arrival of humanity's greatest creation had only just started to change the galaxy forever. The appearance of humanity's giant vessel quickly became the biggest story in the history of the Galactic Coalition. Every news network, every research center, and every government office focused on one question that nobody could answer. Why had humans built something so massive? The truth was simple, but fear rarely waited for explanations. Within days, rumors spread across hundreds of worlds. Some people claimed Earth had secretly prepared for conquest. Others believed the humans had spent centuries hiding advanced technology from everyone else. Wild stories appeared everywhere, and each version sounded more frightening than the last. Ordinary citizens became nervous. Trade companies delayed shipments. Travelers canceled their journeys. Several worlds even organized emergency drills. Nobody wanted trouble. But uncertainty made everyone uneasy. Commander Varen watched the growing panic with concern. He had spent his entire career dealing with facts, not rumors. The more he studied the human transmissions, the more confused he became. Nothing about their behavior suggested aggression. Their messages remained polite. Their ship moved slowly. Their communication channels stayed open. Again and again, the same words appeared in every transmission. "We come in peace." Yet many leaders refused to trust those words. Inside the Coalition Council, debates became heated. Some representatives argued for patience. Others demanded immediate action. "We cannot ignore that thing," one official warned. "It is larger than our defense fleets," another answered calmly. "But they have made no threats, not yet." Those two words echoed throughout that chamber. Not yet. Fear had a way of turning possibilities into certainties. Meanwhile, aboard the human vessel, life continued normally. Captain Orion Hale and his crew remained optimistic. They believed first contact was progressing slowly because the coalition needed time to organize a proper welcome. No one suspected the amount of fear spreading beyond their sensors. Young engineers spent hours discussing alien cultures. Medical teams prepared gifts and scientific reports. Researchers organized years of data that humanity wished to share. Several crew members even practiced introducing themselves in different languages. The excitement on board felt almost like a festival. Many had spent their entire lives dreaming of this mission. Some had left their families for years. Others had dedicated decades to helping build the giant vessel. For them, this journey represented the hopes of billions of people back home. One evening, Captain Hale visited the observation deck. A group of crew members stood beside the windows, staring at distant stars. One of them smiled. "Hard to believe we're finally here." Another laughed softly. "My grandparents used to tell me stories about this day." Someone else spoke quietly. "I just hope they like us." The captain smiled. "They will." He truly believed that. Back in Coalition territory, Commander Varen was becoming increasingly frustrated. He had personally reviewed thousands of pages of information. Human broadcast contained music, educational programs, documentaries, and messages from children wishing peace to other civilizations. Nothing resembled military propaganda. In fact, many of the broadcasts showed ordinary human families laughing together, celebrating holidays, and sharing meals. The more he watched, the harder it became to believe the frightening stories being spread. One evening, he gathered his senior officers. "We are making assumptions without evidence," he told them. An older advisor nodded. "Fear is affecting everyone's judgment." Another officer agreed. "The humans don't act like invaders." Varen folded his arms. "Exactly. But if they are peaceful, why build such a ship?" Someone asked. The room became quiet. That question still remained unanswered. And because nobody understood the answer, fear continued growing. Soon, several powerful systems decided they could not wait any longer. Their leaders reached the same conclusion. The giant vessel represented too much uncertainty, and uncertainty in their eyes was dangerous. A joint fleet was organized. Its purpose was not to start a war. Officially, it was simply meant to force the humans to explain themselves. But everyone understood that one mistake could turn the situation into a disaster. Commander Varen strongly opposed the decision. "We need dialogue," he argued. But his warnings were ignored. Fear spoke louder than reason. When news reached him that the fleet had already departed, he immediately left to join them. If something went wrong, he wanted to prevent tragedy. Days later, the combined fleet arrived near the human vessel. Dozens of ships appeared around the enormous craft. Compared to humanity's giant vessel, they looked surprisingly small. Yet Captain Hale welcomed their arrival. At last, he thought, representatives had come to greet them. He ordered friendly communications to be sent immediately. The bridge crew appeared excited. Everyone expected history to unfold. But the messages coming from the fleet sounded tense. Their commanders demanded explanations. Why was the ship so large? Why had humanity hidden its capabilities? What were its true intentions? Captain Hale listened carefully. He understood their concerns. After all, humans themselves had once feared the unknown. So instead of reacting with anger, he chose patience. He personally appeared on communication screens. His expression remained calm. "We understand your worries," he said. "We are here peacefully." He then explained the truth behind the vessel. Human history had not always been peaceful. Generations earlier, wars and disasters had nearly destroyed everything people loved. Those painful experiences had taught humanity important lessons. Instead of allowing division to continue, nations had united. Scientists, engineers, and dreamers from every corner of Earth worked together. The giant vessel became a symbol of cooperation. Its purpose was simple: protection, exploration, hope. It had never been created for conquest. Captain Hale spoke honestly. Humanity built this ship to ensure that future generations would never face the tragedies of the past. Many officers inside the coalition fleet listened carefully. Some even appeared relieved. But fear had already taken deep roots. Not everyone trusted his words. Tension filled the communication channels. One nervous commander worried that the explanation was merely a distraction. Another insisted that the humans could not be trusted. Commander Varen tried desperately to calm everyone. "Listen to them," he urged. "They are giving us answers." But emotions were stronger than patience, and then something unexpected happened. A young officer aboard one of the coalition vessels misinterpreted a sensor reading. Believing danger was imminent, he reacted too quickly. Within seconds, a defensive system activated. The situation changed instantly. Panic spread across the fleet. Warnings filled every bridge. Captain Hale's crew stared at their screens in confusion. Nobody had expected this. Several human officers prepared defensive systems. But Captain Hale raised his hand. "No aggressive actions." The bridge fell silent. "But sir, no." His voice remained firm. "We are not here to fight." Outside, the giant vessel activated powerful shields. Brilliant waves of light surrounded the enormous craft. Everyone watching expected destruction. Many believed the humans would retaliate immediately. Instead, something unbelievable happened. The human vessel did not attack. It did not pursue anyone. It did not fire powerful weapons. Its systems simply prevented damage and protected the crew. Nothing more. Across the coalition fleet, officers stared in disbelief. They had expected anger. They had expected revenge. But they witnessed restraint. Commander Varen watched the scene unfold and felt both relief and sadness. Relief because disaster had been avoided. Sadness because fear had nearly caused a terrible misunderstanding. Captain Hale reopened communication channels. His face remained calm. "We understand accidents happen." Those words shocked everyone. Nobody expected such a response. One commander lowered his eyes in embarrassment. Another sat silently, unable to speak. For several long moments, nobody said anything. Then Commander Varen stepped forward. On behalf of the fleet, he offered an apology. Captain Hale simply nodded. "There is nothing to apologize for," he answered. "We all fear what we don't understand." Those simple words spread across communication networks throughout the galaxy. Millions heard them. Millions discussed them. And for the first time since the giant vessel had appeared, people began asking a different question. Not whether humanity was dangerous, but whether they had judged humanity too quickly. Commander Varen looked at the enormous ship floating peacefully among the stars. He had expected arrogance. He had expected threats. Instead, he found patience. He found understanding. And most surprising of all, he found people who possessed incredible power but chose kindness over fear. Deep inside, he realized something important. The greatest strength of humanity was not hidden inside the giant engines. It was not found in advanced technology. And it was not measured by the size of their ship. Their greatest strength was something much simpler. They remembered the pain of their own past. And because of that, they refused to let fear decide the future. But unknown to everyone, the events that had just taken place were only the beginning. Because across the galaxy, billions of people had witnessed humanity's response. And that response was about to change everything. The days following the misunderstanding became some of the most important days in the history of the galaxy. News channels across countless worlds replayed the same recordings again and again. People watched as humanity's giant vessel had chosen patience instead of anger. They watched Captain Orion Hale calmly speak to the coalition fleet, and they watched the powerful ship remain peaceful when everyone had expected the worst. Slowly, public opinion began to change. Fear had ruled people's thoughts when the vessel first arrived. Now curiosity was replacing that fear. Questions that once sounded suspicious became genuine. Who were the humans, really? What kind of people built such an incredible machine? And perhaps most importantly, why had they shown so much understanding? Commander Varen noticed the change immediately. Messages that once demanded military action now requested information. Scientists wanted access to human research. Universities wished to exchange knowledge. Cultural organizations hoped to learn about Earth. Even ordinary citizens started sending messages of goodwill toward humanity. For the first time since the giant vessel appeared, hope was beginning to spread. Commander Varen himself decided it was time for something simple, something that should have happened from the beginning. A conversation, not between fleets, not between politicians, but between people. He contacted Captain Hale and requested a direct meeting. The answer came almost immediately. "We would be honored." Those few words brought a smile to Varen's face. 2 days later, a small delegation arrived aboard the human vessel. Despite all the stories surrounding the giant ship, the atmosphere inside surprised everyone. There were no signs of arrogance, no displays meant to intimidate visitors. Instead, the corridors felt warm and welcoming. Paintings decorated several walls. Music played softly in common areas. Crew members greeted visitors with friendly smiles. Some waved enthusiastically. Others looked just as curious as their guests. One young engineer nearly spilled his drink after seeing alien visitors for the first time. The moment caused laughter from both sides. The tension that had haunted everyone for weeks slowly began disappearing. Commander Varen walked beside Captain Hale through one of the observation halls. Stars stretched endlessly outside the enormous windows. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Varen broke the silence. "I spent weeks trying to understand why humanity built this ship." Captain Hale smiled gently, and I realized I was asking the wrong question. The captain looked curious. What should the question have been? Varen glanced around. Why did humanity build it together? The answer came quietly. Because we learned what happens when we don't. Those words carried more meaning than any speech. Captain Hale explained how difficult humanity's journey had been. Earth had faced many challenges throughout its history. People had disagreed. Nations had competed. Mistakes had been made. But over time, humanity learned that survival depended on cooperation. Slowly, former rivals became partners. Scientists shared knowledge. Communities helped one another. And little by little, humanity built something stronger than technology: trust. The giant vessel had become a symbol of that trust. Millions of people had contributed to it, not because they feared the galaxy, but because they believed future generations deserved something better. Commander Varen listened carefully. He saw honesty in the captain's eyes. Not perfection, not pride, just honesty. And somehow that honesty mattered more than the size of the ship itself. Word of the meeting spread quickly. Soon, representatives from other civilizations requested visits as well. One after another, they arrived, and almost every visitor left with the same feeling: surprise. They had expected warriors. Instead, they found ordinary people: teachers, doctors, engineers, researchers, parents, dreamers, people who missed their families, people who shared stories about home, people who laughed at jokes and worried about the future, people who were, despite all their differences, remarkably familiar. Children on distant worlds became fascinated by Earth. Human music gained popularity. Books written on Earth were translated into dozens of languages. Art exhibitions began appearing across the coalition. Even cooking programs featuring human recipes became unexpectedly successful. Captain Hale found himself answering unusual questions. One ambassador spent 20 minutes asking about pizza. Another became fascinated by Earth's oceans. A scientist from a distant world nearly cried with happiness after receiving access to human medical research. The atmosphere throughout the galaxy was changing. Slowly, but noticeably, months passed. Trade routes reopened. Research partnerships expanded. Universities exchanged students. Scientists worked together on projects that once seemed impossible. Diseases that had troubled several worlds for centuries became easier to treat with combined knowledge. Agricultural technology improved food production. Energy shortages became less common. Entire communities benefited from cooperation. And through all of it, the giant vessel remained where it had first arrived. It became more than a ship. It became a meeting place. People from different civilizations gathered there. Friendships formed. Cultures mixed. Ideas were shared. No one had predicted such a future, least of all Commander Varen. One evening, nearly a year after humanity's arrival, he returned to the same observation hall where he and Captain Hale had first spoken. The captain stood beside the window, looking toward the stars. Neither man spoke immediately. They simply admired the view. Finally, Varen smiled. "Do you know something funny?" Captain Hale laughed. "I hope so. When your signal first appeared, everyone expected a small shuttle." The captain grinned. "I know. We were prepared to welcome a few diplomats. And instead," Varen looked around the massive vessel, "instead you arrived with the largest ship anyone had ever seen." Both men laughed. "But that's not the funny part," Varen continued. No, he paused. "The funny part is that everyone believed the ship would change history." Captain Hale raised an eyebrow. "And it didn't?" "It did," Varen answered softly, "but not because of its size." The captain remained silent. Varen smiled warmly. "It changed history because of the people inside." For several moments, neither spoke, because they both knew the statement was true. Technology had impressed the galaxy, but humanity itself had changed it. Years later, historians would study those events endlessly. They would write books, produce documentaries, and debate every detail. But one conclusion remained constant. The arrival of humanity's giant vessel marked the beginning of a new age. Not an age of conquest, not an age of fear, but an age of cooperation. Schools taught children about the misunderstanding that nearly changed everything. And teachers always reminded their students of one lesson: fear grows when people stop listening. Understanding grows when people start talking. Commander Varen eventually retired after many years of service. Yet one memory stayed with him more than any other. Not the emergency meetings, not the frightened politicians, not the endless reports. What he remembered most was the first moment he saw the giant vessel emerge from hyperspace. Back then, he had felt uncertainty. Like everyone else, he had expected something completely different. He had expected strangers. Instead, he had found friends. Sometimes he would smile when remembering those days, because the galaxy had expected a shuttle. But what truly arrived was something far greater. Not merely humanity's supreme battleship, but humanity itself. And in the end, that made all the difference. Long after Captain Hale and Commander Varen were gone, future generations still remembered the story. Children would hear it from their grandparents. Travelers would speak about it while crossing the stars. And historians would repeat the same sentence over and over. The day humanity arrived, everyone thought they were witnessing the appearance of unimaginable power. But history revealed something much more important. They were witnessing the arrival of compassion, hope, and friendship. And those things turned out to be stronger than anyone had ever imagined.